postponed from October 18th and rescheduled for tonight's a special meeting of the Common Council City of Oneonta. It is October 25th, just about 7 minutes after 7 o'clock. And this is called to order. If you could roll, please.
Mayor Drennan?
Here.
Councilmember Murphy?
Here.
Councilmember Davies?
Here.
Councilmember Riesberger?
Here.
Councilmember LaGrange? Here. Councilmember Carson?
Here.
Councilmember Harrington?
Here.
Councilmember Raptor?
Here.
Councilmember Falco?
Here.
And David, would you like to leave us in the I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
pointed to a Dave, and I had two Daves for you there.
Sorry, just
In harmony. Terrific. There are no public hearings scheduled, but there is an opportunity at this moment to listen to petitioners, and so I think we might have a few here. I would ask that you state your name and your address, your residence, and because we have a few people here, if we can keep our comments to about 3 minutes or so, that'd be wonderful. And as is always the case, respectful dialogue is the order of the day. All right, do we have anybody here who would like to speak? I'll start with you, Dave, in the front.
David Hayes, 19 Tilton Avenue, I'll be resident. I believe there's some discussion of the budget on today's agenda, and I may be a little late to the game, but as a person who lives here and is happy to live here, each of you have a fiduciary duty to balance as well as you can and set the best possible policy. And I understand that the natural urge is to cut and to cut and to cut. That's what you do. But I'm thinking back to our friend Dick Miller, who said that the work still has to get done. The work still has to get done, and I'm also thinking about the quality of life here, which is really pretty good. So, short story, in my experience, taxes are always high. Taxes are always high. We always pay too much in taxes wherever you live. Also, the cost of a stamp is always too much. The cost of a gallon of milk is always too much. But it's important that we be able to, for example, fix water main breaks on a timely basis, have working diesel trucks that can plow the snow in a timely manner here in the city, mow the parks, and I'm also going to point out that we've got really pretty remarkable people who serve on city staff, department heads such as Joe Temming, John Williams, who really have their heart in their work for the city. So as you're thinking about the budget and balancing, which is your obligation to your wards, let's be sensible and use the word balance and keep in mind, as I said, the quality of life that we have here. Those are my comments.
Thank you, David. Do we have anybody else who would like to speak? Yes.
Yes, my name is Thomas Murphy. I live at 6 Suncrest Terrace. Been a resident here for about 1.5 years. It is a wonderful city. Certainly am enjoying my time here. The only thing that we have noticed here is the rainoff water that comes from Hartwood College. There is a plot of land that they have above our area. And what happens is on a consistent basis, not just even after a rain, but there's a lot of water that collects up there and comes on down. So there has been special piping that has been put on our property to try and deal with some of the issues, but it is so much that it cannot even contain that. So the only choice we would have if we deal with this solely on our own is to, again, hire and spend a lot of resources on our own to have it dug out and trenched to properly take care of the issue that is being created from this runoff water. We did approach the council a couple months ago and did express our concern. And I'm just going to read, I'll keep it at 3 minutes, I promise. The response: first, thank you for settling in our community. We appreciate you purchasing a home, and hopefully you will become actively engaged within the city hills. And hopefully what we're doing here tonight. You are not alone with your concerns of Hartwood College's responsibilities towards their neighbors, and I will forward your email to our mayor and city administrator as a follow-up to a previous conversation on this very issue we had just a few days ago. This issue is not limited to your neighborhood, but does stretch towards most of the ward where the college land abuts. Which means we should not look at this as a silo, rather more comprehensively to the entire geographical footprint. I did participate in an online neighborhood Zoom meeting last fall with President Dragovich and strongly advocated for the college to clean up the large swale located behind your residents and your neighbors. I will follow up with the Director of Maintenance on the timeline of this work. Since then, they have actually been granted to put in the solar panels up there, which now will clear more land, exacerbating the problem. So we did follow up, and the response that we actually received was for us to come here and to voice our concerns, which is exactly what we're doing. As you mentioned, taxes, they keep going up. We're over $8,000 for our taxes. Yes, it does include school taxes as well. It is, and I've been in several parts of the state, the highest taxes I have paid in the state. And to see the fact that the only way to deal with this problem is for us to spend considerable sums of money to deal with the problem that we did not create is really an unfair burden to the taxpayer. And I mean, it gives me pause. So I'm bringing it to the council here because this is a problem that affects not just one resident, but many residents. I understand Hartwick is a large institution. I work for an educational institution. I do understand the impacts of an educational institution that it has on a community. It's considerable, but they also do need to minimize the damage that they actually do create to the neighbors. They have to be good citizens as well. So I bring it here, and hopefully we can find some resolution to take care of this problem.
Greg, you want to address something?
We're just taking comments now.
Yeah, okay, very good. I will say that we are in conversations with all the parties, and hopefully within at least, I would think, a few months, we might be able to have this report out, some progress, so that we know where we are and the steps that are being taken.
Would it be okay to follow up with your office to see if we can help in any way?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other petitions? Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you very much. And with that, we will move on to our boards and commission. Oh, I'm sorry. I see David Crop here.
Skip right over
The
me.
Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you very much. So with that, David, I will ask you to bring us up to date on Destination Oneonta and what's happening, what's been happening.
Lots of events. I think since the last time I was here, the summer street closures were just ending, and I did forward all of you guys, hopefully, the surveys that all of the downtown merchants was able to fill out, the ones that we've received back. So hopefully that can help you guys figure some things out. And we did have the Balloon Fest, which was a fabulous event. Over 1,500 people came. We had 8 balloons for the weekend, and it was all around was just a wonderful weekend. Not sure if any of you guys were able to make it down there or not. And then we had the harvest party, which again, that was only a Sunday afternoon, but there were people all over the place down at the park. So another great event. We were able to bring in enough sponsors and vendor money to help pay for laser tag, and we offered that free for the community, which was a great addition to have. It offered something that literally we had people coming up to us and telling us that we have grandparents, kids, and grandkids all playing all at the same time. So it was we felt it was a lot better than just doing bounce houses every single event that we do. And then the other thing is, you know, with the report I put in, not totally like what Katrina used to do, but hopefully it was enough information for you guys to know like where the stats and stuff were with the events. And I do have actually another updated information with what's going on with DO as far as we are, for next year, we're gonna refocus and kind of change a little bit of our planning. And I did meet with a couple of you guys and the city, and everyone is on board, and it definitely is looking like we're heading in that direction. Which I did not forward that to you guys, but I do have copies here for people who would like a copy on just a new focus, refocus of what Destination Oneonta is heading in. Thank you. And I can give you a little recap of that piece of paper. And the main focus is we are going to open up our website to all of the businesses and events in Oneonta, not just the business members. And we are actually going to be, hopefully, at the new year, transitioning all of our business members to sponsorship levels. And therefore, our whole website and platform would open up to every business in Oneonta as the full, like if you go onto the, right now, the RFP, we were able to add in the line item for a business, where now we're gonna put in the logo and more wording and links directly to the businesses for Oneonta. We feel it'll definitely benefit the businesses a lot more than we were able to in the past. And then just, try and help support other organizations and community. We've worked together on last couple events that we've done.
If I could touch on that, I'll voucher with the Catskill Coral Society and you, David, were very, very helpful with the Grand and Glorious, and I'd like to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That worked out very, very nicely, thank you.
Yeah, so it's been great. I've been meeting with a lot of the different organizations also, besides just Dave, and everyone is liking the idea of let's work together a lot more than we ever have in the past. And I still have to get Ginny the updated budget information that she needs. But other than that, that's kind of a recap of everything. We've got the Halloween parade and trick-or-treating coming up on Monday. So if you guys want to dress up, come on down.
Candy?
Yes. And then we're getting into swing of holiday stuff. So.
Terrific. Any questions? Yes, Dave?
I've got a question and a statement.
Okay.
The statement is about the movie night. I don't know why that was always done at the beginning of May at night, but I always thought that was a mistake. So I'm glad to know that you guys are finally moving that to the summer. I think that's going to be much more successful. It's going to be later when you can play the movie, but
Right.
it's going to be warmer, and I think you're more likely to get people to come out.
Yes.
The question I have is, looking at the list of everything that you did, there were a couple times that I saw referencing sidewalk sales, like on the Meet Me on Main Street. One of the problems was only 2 stores came out to do sidewalk sales. So my question is, are you looking for businesses to discount their wares and move their wares onto the sidewalk, or one of those? And how many businesses do we have that actually can participate in a sidewalk sale on Main Street? Because I know the number of businesses
Right.
that sell that kind of thing has decreased over the last
Right.
10 years.
So when I was going downtown, talking to all of them, and do I name them that I can remember? Just
It's up to you.
but so there was several of them that said, "Oh, that would be a great idea. I have some old stuff that's been kicking around. I'll put a table out there and we'll sell them for $1. We'll discount them and come outside." The main focus was to just bring the stores outside instead of keeping them inside during that one street closure that we did.
Right.
And everyone loved the idea of, yes, let's come outside, and then the day of, there was 2 of them that came out. And that was, the different consignment shops. I think we have 4 of them now. And then a couple of the retail stores, they were all like, yeah, I've got stuff that I've had for a while that's not selling.
Okay.
But they just didn't come out.
Okay.
I don't know why day of they didn't. It could have been a lot of the thing is a staffing issue to bring product outside. I understand it's a
Lot of
staffing.
work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
David, could you update us on the OCI program?
Yes. So we have. Let me pull it up actually. Probably about 12 phone calls a week, asking questions about it. And up to date, we are up to, as of last week, there were 330 hits on the link to look at the application and guidelines. And so we have we just had a whole bunch of updates from last week. So we have the Deer Management Committee is approved. The Greater Oneonta Historical Society and Roots were both approved. I don't know if you got that message. And then we've got the Friends of Recovery. We have a Girl Scouts, and then the Steve Sisterman has been approved for basically this quarter. But close to a dozen emails or phone calls every week asking questions about it. And then there are a couple that have been denied for funding. So probably not where we thought we were going to be. But when I looked at the hits on how many that application is getting, it's getting quite a few hits.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Are you seeing primarily more applications from organizations or from community individuals?
Probably more organizations.
Really? Okay. That's what it sounded like with the awards. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, a couple of them that one that did not get approved, it was one of the elementary schools, wanted to do a project in her classroom. So that one did not get approved. And that was the only one that really did not get approved. But a lot of people just calling it, and the people that are calling are more individuals. The ones that are actually following through and filling out the application are more the businesses and organizations.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about, like how to get them to take that next step to go through with the application.
Right. And that I don't know, because I do tell them, please call me, please email me back with any questions that you guys may have. So I just don't know if I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know it's like a fault of you. I'm just trying to think about why it might be that organizations are following through with it and what that girl might be. I hadn't considered that at the outset of this, so.
I can
It's new
say that
information.
one of the frustrations that I know I've talked to Judy about is, we can say that you can get half of your money back on your water bill or whatever it may be, and just there are all these different things, not for OCI, but.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't remember that part.
But it's very difficult sometimes for people to take a look at an application and say, I wanna go through that and get
Right.
that thing that has, there is some difficulty around that, but I think it will start to build. You should see a little bit more, as I just had a conversation with the fraternities and sororities of both Hardwick and SUNY on Sunday, and I was very much pitching the idea that they are not just brothers and sisters, but they are neighbors, and so they should step up and take advantage of the opportunity to do some things in the neighborhood.
Yeah, and we had the Hartwick women's soccer coach reach out a month before the Harvest Festival, and he was like, can we help volunteer, do anything? You have this event coming up. So that's something where I even put on our website, and I put their logo on the banner and thank them, and same thing with the parade. We've got the Greek life from Harvard College coming down and helping with the parade part. So I put their logo on the event because they are helping out, and I do want the community to know that the colleges are here and that they're helping.
It's a build. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have one quick thing. I want to be mindful of everyone's time, but one thing I did notice with the application is that it feels like it's very event geared, like you have to put in a timeline for an event. So some projects might not be event specific, I don't know, just something to consider, I guess. And then I am curious, what are the projects? I don't want to take up too much time, but if you could just be like, oh, they're good.
Some of them were, someone wanted to paint all the side crosswalks in the city. Another one wanted to do more planting of the flowers.
Are these ones that have been approved?
that have been that I have talked to.
I'm curious which ones have been, what has been approved.
Oh, what has been approved?
Yeah.
So the Deer Management Committee, they wanted approval for renting the space and getting paperwork and signage and stuff like that.
Okay.
That was the Deer Management Committee. And then the Roots in the History Center, they're doing lights behind. Hope you know about that. They're doing lights behind it to do that.
In the alleyway.
What's that? In the alleyway to help do that. Fordue is making blankets for the shelter.
Okay.
And the Girl Scout is doing a whole bunch of presentations with a butterfly and flower thing at Fortin Park. My mind went blank. What's the place there in Fortin Park? Owl. Thank you. So that only got approved. So much money was gonna go for that, and other stuff was gonna go, so they did not approve that because that was gonna be in the town. So not all of her funding that she wanted was fully approved. And then Steve Sisselman was the sprinkle project, where he lined Main Street with basically people holding signs
Yes.
and stuff like that, which we
It was
did.
like positivity, right?
Yes, but we're running into issues with that one, just because it was going to cost so much money to ship the signs back to the next location. He did not put enough money in the budget, so we're trying to make an amendment to actually, it'll be cheaper now for him to purchase the signs and then do it a couple times a year or once a year, and then we don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's actually cheaper to purchase the signs now than to send them to the next location. So I'm just waiting for the committee to give me the okay to do an amendment for an extra $175 to his original $150. So, which I think that'll be cool because then there's no more money laying out and he can do the project a couple times a year.
That's great. Yeah, I was just curious, and also for the public, to hear, to get ideas and generate their own ideas about ways that they can use this funding too. So that's wonderful, thank you.
And of course, Wendy Slicer,
Yes.
and that was the triangle.
Oh, she didn't fill it out online. That's why I didn't have hers on here. I'm looking on the online.
Right. All right, so if no more questions or comments for Dave, we're going to thank you very much for that presentation, and we will move on to
Thank you guys.
boards and commission reports. And we will start off with the Housing Commission, council member.
Oh, skipping over public service? I have it right here. Just one moment. Okay, so the Housing Commission met on October 12th, Wednesday at 7 p.m. New members were introduced. There was Deborah Marcus, who's the CEO of Family Planning, working with the Refugee Resettlement Group, and Kurt Schulte, who's the Executive Director of Oneonta Housing Authority, working with affordable housing. There's a new website published in the works, all for Oneonta, which will be a public-facing source of information for about all the various ad hoc committees, schedules, agendas, etc. And then they kind of noted that draft meeting notes could be publicly posted for each committee, filtered through the chair of the commission. New business, that each ad hoc committee on the commission had their first meetings. So I'll I guess I should go through each of those. I'll start with refugee resettlement. Deborah Marcus, kind of said that, housing for refugees, one of the issues that they're coming up with, it needs to be long-term and an actual home, not short-term, in the same house as another family. So trying to secure those homes and also secure the funding and all the inner workings together, it's just been a very complicated process. Then we had Jared Shu with Smart Growth. During their meeting, they discussed the definition of smart growth, kind of discussed some past studies and housing plans, climate and environmental planning, demographics, and what population we're trying to attract. And then they have a target of January to have a list of grants that they could encourage the city to apply for. They have also decided to have 2 meetings a month, and they had the second one on the 17th. Then we had the Neighborhood Improvement Work Group with Hannah Baskin. That group meets each third Wednesday of the month. The next is November 16th at 6 p.m. at the United Methodist Church. As far as neighborhood improvement, they discuss sidewalks, sustainability, such as native planting, lawn reduction, absentee landlords, student rentals as a stressor, historical preservation, code enforcement, and home maintenance, code enforcement, excuse me. A survey is being created for people to comment on what positive and negatives are most prevalent in their neighborhoods. Then we have infrastructure work group with Jen Armstrong. Joan Fox was designated chair of the group, and the next meeting is on the 27th of this month at City Hall. Their action items are to identify and catalog vacant and available lots, possibly to convert buildings and present these to the Common Council, these lots, and then they want to identify and encourage landlords to utilize upper story housing. Affordable housing, Kurt Schulte has not met yet. Senior housing, Bob Brzezowski, they met on September 2nd and elected Nicole Blanchard as the chair. Priorities as a work group, they're putting together a needs assessment study in progress. Let me see. They kind of discussed types of housing, such as for the elderly, multi-generational homes, tiny home projects, community homes where people employ maintenance workers as a group. And their first priority is to look at infrastructure, followed by changes in code and transportation needs as necessary. Their next meeting is November 1st here at the Mayor's Conference Room at 6 p.m. Commissioner Mike Wilkie was not in attendance. He is supposed to represent short-term landlords and student rentals. And closing notes chairs are still being decided for each committee. And I think that is about it. Does that, that was a mouthful, so thanks.
Questions, comments for Emily? Yes, Glenn.
So Mayor, maybe this is back to you, but, so Emily's been tasked with being the liaison to the Housing Commission.
Correct.
But we're not asking her to attend all 7 subcommittees, correct?
No, that was the report that was provided by those 7 commissioners at the Housing Commission.
Right,
Yeah, I just
so,
would want
yeah,
to
so I realize it's a lot, but I feel like that's the only way I can kind of, tell everybody what's happening at that meeting.
Right.
So kind of go through.
But you're watching or listening to that, or?
I go to the Housing
Housing
Commission meeting, and then they give their report,
Okay,
and then I'm just taking notes on that. But I'm not going to all of those individual meetings.
okay.
I mean,
That's a lot.
unless you are requesting that I go
No.
to them.
No,
We are not.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, thank you very much. And we'll move on then to Commissioner Katie Lepari-Shu and the Public Arts Commission.
Sure. So I did not attend the Public Arts Commission meeting, but I did watch it on YouTube, and it was a 9-minute meeting where no new topics were discussed. Basically, they went through everything that has been discussed previously, being the mural in Foothills, mural or sort of wall art on the public safety building. Basically, the commission is sort of stalled out on 2 fronts. One being that all of these projects would need funding, which we don't have at current, and then the other being that the master plan, I think, is with city staff at this point. Yeah, for approval before it comes to council. So they don't have a lot of forward motion that they can make. So they kind of met and went over everything, and my report was about as long as the meeting was, so it was a good time. Any questions? I don't know if I have more to say than that, but
All right,
I'll do my best.
I appreciate that. Council member Katie Lepari-Shu, as opposed to Commissioner, I think I called you.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
So move on to the Environmental Board and Councilmember Davies.
Thanks, Mayor. The Environmental Board met October 17th. It was a 30-minute meeting, which I was previously going to say was probably the fastest meeting in history of the city of Guyana, so it was a 9-minute meeting. Interestingly, there was a petitioner, Caitlin Davey, who was actually on the agenda for today to be voted onto the Environmental Board, who was coming there because she was interested in assessing 2030, which is the sustainability goals that were created in 2013, I believe. And so she's going to be getting that, and then I think she'll be a real nice addition to the board because she's going to be looking at the 2030 goals and assessing those and trying to give some feedback to the city in terms of what we can begin to address. So it's nice, those have been kind of sitting there getting dusty, and 2030 is only getting closer. Then the standing committees reported. The Urban Forest reported about their tree plantings. They put 21 American Liberty elms into the ground in September and October. 10 of those were on residential streets. 11 were in the parks or public land. Spread throughout the wards. There was a couple wards that did not have sites to be able to put them in, and there was several wards that had quite a bit of few sites. So there was in Ward 6 and Ward 8, there were 7 trees that were planted. So that was nice to get those into the ground. It's been a long time coming, and thanks to Greg and Chris for all the help on that particular area. Let's see, they had an update from the deer, from a person who's on the deer task force, I guess. And they will be giving a report back and making recommendations. They're trying to do that to quality of life by December. There was a little bit of talk about kind of next step for folks that are interested in energy and transportation, and they had a conversation about some of the kind of green, sustainable purchasing, and also want to create some sustainable goal setting. So more to come on that. And lastly, public spaces. If you recall, they were trying to create a little bit of an action to get school children involved with creek naming, some of our unnamed creeks within the city of Oneonta. That kind of fell apart because they couldn't find the right teachers. But they're going back. They kind of recreated the process through which they're trying to name these creeks, and they do have some folks that are interested in getting involved. So they're hoping to be able to bring some new creek names to us shortly. And that's it. Any questions?
No? Okay, let me just tell you though, Caitlin is going to be a tremendous addition to that, and a real data driver too, which I think is just always a great thing.
She's done a master's in some kind of environmental planning or something. It'd be a real nice addition to that particular board.
Right. And I think the click presentation for the quality for the deer management is actually more likely to be on your November calendar.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much, Councilmember. And we will move on now to our Charter Review Committee. Scott? No, we're not. Did I miss something? Oh,
Planning Commission.
okay. I'm sorry. Councilmember Risberger. Yes.
Sure. The Planning Commission met on October 5th, and they did not have a quorum, so everything got shifted to the 19th. And there were 3 different items. NBT Bank, and if anybody has gone by the bank, they can see the work has started. There was a design review on their Wall Street site, proposed modification of the building to accommodate moving the ATM to the exterior of the building with a bus stop type shelter around it. The ATM side was removed, or would be removed, with a transaction drawer added. They need 2 tellers at all times, so if they only have 1, they can still lock down the bank, but then still do transactions through the drawer. So it was a type 2 action under seeker that was approved, and the project was approved. Second item was Tracy Bates, 4 Chester Street, proposing the installation of a retaining wall at the rear of the property to level the lawn. And then the lawn was replaced, a section of it with number 2 stone, in order to install a 450 square foot shed structure. That was a type 2 action under seeker, and that and the site plan was approved. And the last one was Cody Galasso. I apologize if I'm not saying his name correctly. 1416 Otsego Street. He was proposing the demo of the existing front porch and construction of a new set of stairs to access the apartment. There was some pushback from a petitioner as well as some on the board about the removal of the porch. This was a house that was built roughly 1920. And the thought was that removing the porch was going to not only detract from the historic nature of the building, but it would affect the neighborhood. So this was deemed a type 2 action. There was discussion back and forth. He was very accommodating, and he's willing to rebuild the porch. It won't be the same because unfortunately the look of that porch, getting those materials is very difficult. So the site plan review was approved with a condition of the rebuild of the existing porch no later than May 1st of next year. And then the demo was approved. So that's it.
Sorry for the oversight. Questions, comments? No. All right, thank you very much. All right, I teased it, but now we'll come right to you with your charter review committee report.
So the Charter Review Committee did meet. We had our first meeting. City Administrator Tice was there along with the mayor. Also Dave Merzen was there, our city attorney. Got a little bit of a history lesson real quick on the charter and what might constitute a public versus just home rule. There's a lot of homework given on the first meeting of home rule, along with another pamphlet that was written from the state about our form of government, which is a city administrator form of government. Also, our first part of our homework goes to what brought us here was the ad hoc committee, so we're going back to take that on first and look at the language and see what might be confusing and whatnot. And then the goal is when we get that settled, we're gonna give that to our city attorney for his review, and we're gonna take on another portion, and we're just gonna keep it moving to make our goal of that the mayor set for us. But we also talked to the mayor that if we start in our progress, if it looks like it might take a little bit longer, to give us that little bit of time so nothing's rushed.
Questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Moving on, going back to Dave Risberger for the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee.
Yes, we met on the 24th, and it was a very short meeting. The first item was the intersection of River Street and London Ave. This came from a complaint from a resident who frequently uses that intersection. There was a complaint about the sight line when they're trying to pull out onto River Street. The sight line distance currently is from London Ave is 30 feet to the west and 30 feet to the east, but that's not up to current safety standards. The proposed sight line would be 121 feet to the west and 86 feet to the east. That's what's standard. The downside is we would lose about 4 to 6 parking spaces. Accidents in that intersection, there were two accidents in the last 3 years. There was a little bit of back and forth about what to do with this, so it ended up being that deciding that Scott is going to talk with the business owner on the corner, and then we're going to discuss again at the next meeting when Greg's present, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more information. The second item was the corner of East and Cedar Street, which is actually a similar issue. It's a sightline issue. I actually brought this to the committee because when you go to East Street, if you look down the hill, it's fine. You look up the hill because you're looking up the hill, and where the parking is, the sightline doesn't appear to be correct. So Chris is going to go back and do some mapping for us and bring that back to the next meeting.
Questions, comments? None. All right, well, thank you very much, and we're gonna skip over, for this meeting, we'll revisit it next, the Finance and HR Committee, but we'll move on to Economic Development. And Len, but not today's meeting, the meeting from
September 27th.
Yep.
We had several items on our agenda, the alleyway improvements. We discussed both west and east alleyways. We were describing that for now. And then we ended up doing a site visit, the three of us, and I think that was very productive to actually have a hands-on. The first alleyway to the west, much smaller, I think much more manageable, and next month we'll give you an update on what's happened there, some positive movements going forward. Not to conflict information, we'll say that one. We found out that the alleyway to the east is much larger but has more opportunity. We're going to be working with Judy and Steve through this process, so that's probably a multi-year pronged approach to that. There's infrastructure questions and then right-of-way questions, and so I think that one's just going to take some time. We moved on to the city's role in building out infrastructure for economic development, whether it's residential or commercial. We did have a local developer come and speak and, made suggestions on how that could be, whether we amortize it, the cost, and recoup those costs after the property is sold, but it's a way, through the Triple P or public-private partnership to get through this to create economic development. There was a concern about the bus schedule and how it's impacting the downtown businesses. We did find out from city staff that the current schedule still is running Thursday, Friday, and Saturday till 3 a.m. We have started a conversation both last month and this month on properties that are deficient in property and school taxes, and what would that opportunity look like. Unfortunately, our financial director was extremely busy today and was unable to meet with us for a meeting at 5:30, but we look forward to hearing from her perspective on how that would be. There's an opportunity, there might be a hybrid system where we can take some properties, not all the properties, and take the risk, I guess we would say, of not being made whole by the county for those 3 years until the county, or until the property is put into foreclosure. And then this is where an LDC would kick in, and then LDC would have that opportunity to move that property forward. So I think it's going to be a hybrid system. Obviously, we do not want to put more work on city staff, whether it's in Judy's department or Jim's department. So we talked about it last month, we talked about it today, and we're going to continue discussing that topic also. And this falls in line with the mayor's vision of bringing 1,000 employed people, of which they're going to need somewhere to stay, so we know that we need different types of housing. And then last on our list was marketing of students in baseball tours, and I think you were assigned to that or not, I'm not forgetting that one, but either way, there's a subcommittee of our committee, and that's to meet with these two groups. We were going to assign, right?
So there's a marketing task force.
Correct.
And the mayor, I'm sure, gives me more on that. But, so there is like a subcommittee who's gonna sort of tackle that.
Forgive me, sorry.
Yeah, no, since you've talked, there's been some reconsideration of the best possible route to take around that, and I don't know if this is the place to share that with you, but I'll share that with you.
Sorry, I
No,
definitely
that's
do
fine.
not want to add any more to your list.
No worries, yeah.
So I think that's what we have, September 27th.
Great.
Trying not to conflict with what happened today.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments? No. Thank you very much, Lynn. And with that, we will now move to the city administrator's report.
As part of the Downtown Oneonta Historic District's set into save designation, you'll remember from earlier this summer, this last week there was a takeover by of the Preservation League of New York State Instagram account by a local person, Sarah Evanson. So if you want to go back and check out posts that were shared, it was really great marketing, I would say, a marketing campaign in and of itself of Oneonta and what some of the great things are about Oneonta's historical buildings. So check out Preserve NYS on Instagram. Take a look back through that. It was done on Tuesday, the 18th, last Tuesday. Police officer recruit Michael Halper is just finishing up the academy. He's progressed quickly. He's done some of his on-the-job training. He will be staff. All response has been positive. He's set to graduate into this week. It was on cases with things filtering earlier than expected. Recreation Administrator Lou Lansing, she's organizing a meeting with relevant city staff and organizers of the various large events that are typically held in our parks. We're going to do this in the next couple of weeks in hopes of making some improvements in 2023 that will benefit everyone. We think just getting all of those users together, having a conversation will benefit not just the city, but the users themselves. That includes some of the races that start in New Park. We've been talking about how we might work with them to have a route that is entirely contained within the park. It might be less burdensome on city staff as well as volunteers having to direct traffic. That's something we'll be looking at. Sidewalk replacements plan to start in about 2 weeks, weather depending. Various locations, again, depending on how much they're able to get this done this year, whether we're going to start at the Wayne Street, then possibly going to Elm Street, or these locations. Tree trim removal, that's going to occur in November, starting next week. Should be complete that month. I know there's been some concerns from some constituents. We've got a few emails about things, but those should be taken care of soon. Pavement markings, we do have a contractor who's agreed to do a couple of days of work for us this fall, and weather permitting. At this point, they're going to have to heat up the asphalt to apply some markings. We don't expect we're going to get everything done that we really would like to get done, but if they're available while the weather is still conducive, we will do what we can. We still have a date set for that. Bronx Street storm line replacement, that's planned to start in a few weeks. The drainage improvement project forward. The new hot box trailer, which is the asphalt patching trailer, that's in our possession but not yet in service. We're just waiting on some insurance paperwork, and then it'll be out. That was purchased earlier this year. Watershed property forest management. So the city's forestry consultant Rod Jones is preparing for the sale of both softwood and hardwood timber stands located on city property in the watershed. The last thing I had is the design of the Brook Street and Flint Street culvert rehabilitations is underway. We expect that will be completed in January, followed by bidding and construction in spring. Any questions? Okay.
That was like a race. So I just want to circle back to pavement markings. I had sent an email, and thank you and Chris for both responding to me with regard to pavement markings at the intersection of Center and West. I know you had noted about you had called them long lines, which is the double yellow line. So that's not entirely what I was talking about. I think my concern is more I'm bringing it up here because you mentioned pavement markings, and if it's something that folks agree is needs to happen. And so I'm wondering if anybody else has noticed this, but what I'm really talking about is where folks stop, on Center, that line that tells you how far back you should be stopped. And then also the turning lane to turn left onto Center from West. Because what I find is that people go way up on Center, almost into West Street to be able to see in both directions, and then someone will come and cut that really close. And so I feel marking that distance, that safe distance would be helpful. It's happened to me twice, which is why I brought it up. But I know that you guys had, some genuine engineering thoughts on that, so I wanted to invite those once I clarified what I was talking about. And I just haven't gotten around to bringing the email back to you, so thank you for allowing me to do it here.
Sure, yeah, thanks for clarifying. I think that's probably one that would be on our list to consider if we can, if we get a couple days out of a contractor, I don't know, Chris, if we're talking 70 or so intersections at most.
Oh, geez.
Roughly, yeah.
That we could do.
Yeah. I actually spoke with our crew, and they're gonna take some 2x4 and try to do some line work of our own.
Okay.
Not spray painting, but it's latex paint. It lasts about 6 months. It goes through the winter season.
Okay.
Enough time to do our 2023 painting project. But yes, we are aware. We actually had complaints from bus drivers because people aren't stopping back far enough,
Yes.
and the buses can't get around that corner at Weston Center. So
Okay.
we're aware of it, and we're gonna put some paint down there as best we can without, the tools.
Yeah.
We're gonna use 2x4s and things like that to make straight lines.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you so
So
much.
that's your question, Dave?
Yes.
A while back, we were having a study done on the historic districts. Do we have an update on that? That originally was supposed to be done
before
So
that.
Seagull 2000.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up on that with, Seagull 2000, I don't have enough details, sorry.
That's a good question.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, yes.
Greg, I'd like to go back to the tree trimmings and then tie that in with NYSEG. You had a meeting with NYSEG execs a month or so ago. What's developed since then? Are we continually putting pressure upon their organization to do the trimmings? I gotta be honest with you, I was standing there outside of Nick's Diner this last week, and it's just reminding me of the, the loss of power and how it affects, not just Chestnut Street, but the 6th Ward, the 5th Ward. I just wanna make sure that we stay in contact with NYSEG and hear what their plan is for actually trimming those trees.
Yeah, I had another meeting with, Art Klingler from NYSEG a couple of weeks ago. I can send out, I don't have a notes right in front of me right now, but I can, pass notes from that, send something out to council, okay, we could have a few things to share.
Just a quick brief, do you feel that they're gonna be actively trimming back the trees the right of way?
Yeah, I'm told that their most recent rate case includes ramped up tree trimming. Yes, they do plan to do that. Exact timeline, again, I don't have the notes in front of me, so I don't wanna say something I'm not exactly.
Okay. And then I guess I would be remiss, I have 2 constituents from Suncrest Terrace in the 5th Ward. They are not only inundated with stormwater, but also domestic drinking water. And I just want to know, we've gotten near the end of October. I thought we were going to hear sometime in October about the grant that we had applied for. And with these folks here, I just wondered if we had any update to give them on the domestic water.
Judy, do you have anything?
Yeah, so the final IUP was just issued this week, the intended use plan. So the next step is waiting for the state, not the state, sorry, Environmental Facilities Corporation will be sending us a letter to tell us what the funding is on that. And I don't know when that's gonna come. We had to have the final IUP issued first, and now they'll be working on letters to the communities to let them know what their funding is.
So is this an agency that we check back every couple of weeks to see where they're at, or they have a
Nope.
definitive timeline? that
No, there's not a timeline, they will get the letters out when they get the letters out, and we're just waiting. Our projects landed on the IUP where we expected them to.
Good.
They're in line for, the WIA money, as well as, that particular project is in line for WIA money, Water Infrastructure Improvement Act money,
Mhm.
and also, bill money, which is Bipartisan Infrastructure Act money, which came down from the federal government to the state. So we just wait. There's no pushing, we can check in when, to find out if they know, but about when they're gonna come out with it, but they probably don't know that yet.
Right. Okay. And that's on the domestic water, because I think that was something like a 2 point something, or 3 point something.
That's on the drinking water, it's on there for, 6.6 million.
Right, but wasn't that two projects, or was that?
We have a whole bunch of water projects on the IUP. That particular project is 6 million. We have another one that's on for another 6 million. We have some lead, water lateral project or water service projects that are also listed, and then we have a couple wastewater projects as well. So.
I was a little humbled to hear Thomas use my words as he spoke earlier, but Chris and Greg and the mayor and I, we did meet earlier this year, and there was a plan that we were gonna get together with Hartwick staff. Now that the transition has happened, the inductions has happened, I suspect that we're gonna be making those contacts with the new president moving forward.
Yeah, there's no question of that. And again, we'll keep you informed, and you're more than welcome to.
I know that doesn't help your frustration at this point, but this is what we're going through, because we don't want to see you siloed, because it really is a very large issue that more than just one neighborhood is subjected to. But I have been in your neighborhood after a good rainstorm, and it is impressive on the amount of water that parks out of their lawns. I mean, he's at 6 Suncrest, and the amount of water that comes around on his driveway, and then goes across the street to Mr. Tomeo's residence, of which we city staff did a great job putting in curbs, and that's helped his property, because it would just keep continuing going down the hillside, so.
I do appreciate, thank you. I mean, I just know there's code enforcement, if it's not on flat and it goes down, that is a violation there, so.
But again, thank you for coming tonight.
Anybody else with any other comments or questions for the city administrator?
Regarding the Suncrest Terrace neighborhoods, when that development was built in the 60s, 70s? 60s? Did the developer put any drainage in anywhere up there?
Yeah, there's some city drainage.
No, I mean drainage to take care of the water that was gonna come off the mountain.
No, above, that gentleman's property in that area,
They didn't know.
I don't know, there's a swale up there, I'm not sure when it was constructed, it might have been constructed as part of that project, I really don't know.
That swale's on Hartwick property.
Yeah. But also, I mean, it's kind of confusing, but there's fire hydrants up there also.
Yes.
So this
Right.
it's kind of grayish area, but it is Harvard College property, and the swale is there, and it would be just nice if we can get that rectified. The problem right now also is that the solar array has been put on pause because of material shortage. And so when we have these lengthy discussions through the planning commission process, there's socks that are gonna be installed, and these socks, will retain some of the water, the stormwater coming down, at which we don't know how much, but was the thought process, is that those socks are gonna help out.
Those are intended to mitigate erosion during construction, that won't really affect the volume of water or the path that groundwater takes, just to be clear.
That's definitely not what they had explained to the general public and myself when we were going through the process, because we kept bringing up the stormwater issue, and they kept relaying to us that the socks were gonna help, so. And that's before the swale, and then the swale is the last preventive measure before it gets to their property up and down Suncrest. So,
Well, I think in the end, they're probably gonna need to dig some kind of French drain around the back of all those homes, just to give that water a place to go and drain out of there. So, but hopefully something can come of the discussion with Hardwick.
Good, all right. Are we all done with Greg? I think we are, all right. Just gonna disappoint everybody, no speech from me. I've been giving an awful lot of speeches the last few weeks, but two of them, I'll say, one was up at SUNY Oneonta and the other at Harvard College for the inaugurations of both of those presidents. And I just want to say to anyone who is unaware of how lucky we are right now to have these two folks at the helms of these two colleges. For what we need to do and where we need to go as a city and as a community, to have these kind of partners on these two campuses, I can't overstate how lucky we are. So that's that. I do want to bring you up to speed, though, on something that I'm sure would be of interest to many here, and that's the warming station in Oneonta. Some folks may be aware of this, may not. The roof at 189 Chestnut Street had collapsed, and we didn't have a warming station. The location of the warming station will be at the First Presbyterian Church around the corner here at 296 Main Street. Their intention is to open on November 1st. They ask that if anyone, and I'm speaking to you guys now, anyone has time to donate either time or muscle or a truck, that you contact them. They will also be accepting donations of items, including non-skid socks and hats and gloves and ready-to-eat shelf-stable food and grab-and-go foods and juice and bottled water and coffee and tea and hot cocoa and cream and sugar substitutes. So they're basically, if you can help out with that warming station, God bless you. And on the subject of redistricting, thank you very much to Kerry, by the way. I've been mulling how to do this, and then Kerry pulled up the minutes of a meeting that Dick Miller had. Dave Risberger, you'll remember it, because you were here. When have you not been here?
Before they
Go back a ways. But anyway, so 12 years ago, what, Mayor Miller did is the same thing that I was contemplating doing, and I'm gonna ask you folks to do, which is, if each, council member would reach into their ward, and see if you can identify a party in your ward, a person in your ward. If you can reach across party lines for that, that would be ideal, but it's not necessary. But if you can suggest to me a name, ideally by the end of the weekend or Monday of next week, who might participate in this committee, that would be great. So we'd be looking at 8 wards being represented by folks of your choosing. And then I'm going to ask that Luke Murphy, in your role as you were still chair of the Oneonta Democratic Committee, and Len Carson as the standard bearer for the Republican Party in the last mayoral election. I remember you well. If you both might join that committee, and I'm going to ask that, and I'll rather inform you, that Gary Herzig, former Mayor Herzig, has stepped up and he will chair that committee. I expect we're looking at half a dozen meetings at the very most, probably over the course of a month and a half or so at the very most. The expectation is that the services that were provided a dozen years ago by the folks, and Greg and I have been discussing this actually quite a bit, at SUNY New Paltz, that worked out very well for us, and we're going to most likely take advantage of those same services unless the committee suggests otherwise. But again, so if you guys can reach into your wards and find me a good candidate, we'll have 8, and then Len, and then Luke, and then thank you again to former Mayor Gary Herzig for stepping up to chair Dave.
Just so you were aware, when this was done with Dick Miller, there was no liaison from the council. That was an independent body that worked on their own, so there was no thought that there was any kind of interference from any local party, from the Democrats or the Republicans or whatnot. And they came to the council every now and then to report on where they were. I'm just afraid that having influence from the local parties could give the impression that there's going to be pushing and nudging to determine how things are.
I feel pretty confident about these 2 individuals being able to be aware of the direction that the meetings are taking, and also, while there may not have been a liaison, I don't think it hurts at all to have a couple of council members who are privy to the workings of the group to be able to report back. I understand and I take your concern to heart, appreciate it, but I think you could similarly make the same case of the chair, former Mayor Gary Herzig, Democrat, but I think we can all expect a nonpartisan approach from him in this matter as well. So I feel confident about this group, and unless there is significant council objection to that formation, which I'm more than willing to entertain if that is in fact the case, I'd like to think that we might be able to move forward with this fairly quickly. Yes, Kate.
Could you elaborate on the work that the committee will be doing?
And actually, let me defer to Dave, who has actually been, Dave Risberger, who's actually been in, the process a dozen years ago, but you probably have a recollection.
All I can tell you is what they reported to us on,
Okay.
because they were the ones doing the work, and they had to learn how to look at voting blocks and come up with some scenario that worked.
And as-
That's all I know.
So I guess,
I'm just trying to suss out, thinking of everyone that I know, who would be good at this work.
right, so
Data-driven people.
Sure. It is my understanding, having read through the minutes that were wonderful minutes, by the way, that were provided of those meetings from a dozen years ago, that ultimately they wound up landing on the services of this group from SUNY New Paltz. I've spoken with these folks in these last couple of months. They provide us with a proposal, no dollar amounts attached to it, but a scope of work and a proposal. I've discussed this as well with the city administrator. And it's unlikely, although it would be up to the committee, but it's unlikely that they wouldn't want to pursue the very same yes.
I guess I have a question of, I understand Lynn and I are being asked to be liaisons. Given the very sensitive nature of this, and I obviously don't want to tip the scales, what would our involvement be on the committee? Simply reporting, or, I guess I'm...
I look at it as a committee of 11.
Okay.
And so I see you folks having, equal representation and voices in the process.
Okay.
Would they be voting on the plan that comes out of that?
Yeah, because that seems a little conflicting.
That's what I was thinking.
Again, this is a work in progress, and I'm more than happy to take some direction in council from the council. If your sense of it is that, Len and Luke, that your preference is to be more informed of the process and be liaison to the process.
I guess my concern is, and this is by no means because I'm in this boat too, I feel if we were voting on the wards, that would be a conflict of interest.
Correct.
Mhm.
I definitely just have a couple seconds to think about it. I see that conflict of interest, and I also, I'm representing not only the Fifth Ward, but the rest of the city, so when this item comes before us and I participate in it, wouldn't I have to abstain from voting on that? So I just, for me, just having heard this for the first time, it seems like it would be better to have this as an independent body and then bring it back to the council to hear it as a whole.
And I take your point. And so if there's, trying frankly to err on the side of absolute inclusion,
Right.
and fairness, but in this conversation, if the consensus is that both from your perspective, Luke, and your perspective, Len, that you would rather either not be involved at all in the process, or just be involved as liaisons, and maybe you need to be clear.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I don't see where you can beat out the conflict of interest being there in the room when they're discussing redistricting.
To that, all
As
right.
an elected official,
So-
I'm not a lawyer, but
Sure.
I'm seeing
So point taken.
conflict.
So we'll remove both Luke and Lynn. I was thinking of you, so you know that.
And I appreciate it.
All right, but we'll remove you from that consideration, so we'll have former Mayor Herzig leading up this group of 8. Yes, Dave?
One more question.
Sure.
Since former Mayor Herzig is in the 4th Ward, I would assume he would be the 4th Ward representative. You don't want, otherwise you get 2 people from the 4th Ward. See, I'm just remembering what happened in the past, where every time they came back, and there were different plans that floated around, some with reducing the council to 6 members, and some that were expanding it and shifting everything dramatically. So the discussion, it's not gonna be a simple discussion. So, and you certainly wanna have a balanced discussion with
All right, so that's an interesting notion that doesn't allow you a tie-breaking vote.
They didn't need, I think they had 6 on the last one, maybe 8, but I think it was an even number.
Again, I'm not married to anything but the goal here, which is to present the most nonpartisan process as is possible. And if former Mayor Herzig being a 4th Ward resident, and I think we can all probably agree that he'd be a good choice for that ward and takes you off the hook as far as that goes. I'm perfectly fine with that too, so we can make that adjustment as well. So we've now gotten this down to a body of 8. Shall we take it down to 6? No.
I know, I think 8 is, I'm sorry, I should ask.
No, go ahead.
I think 8 makes sense.
Yes.
In the unlikely event of a tie, it could always come before the council, we vote on it anyway.
That's fine. That's fine.
Even if there's two conflicting plans, we would vote on it.
All right. Again, the goal is to be as fair, nonpartisan, and transparent as is possible. I'm always adjustable on almost everything, as you're starting to figure out. So we've moved from 11 to 10 to 8, but we're going to hold off at 8, but we're going to have former Mayor Herzig sit in as the 4th Ward representative, which means that everybody but Katie is going to be finding names for me sometime, hopefully by the time we get to our Monday, so that we potentially can even talk about it on Tuesday at our next council meeting. I appreciate the exercise. Thank you very much. All right, so that's all I have for my remarks, and we will move on now to our consent agenda. All right. So we start with the approval of the minutes. Motion that the Common Council approves the minutes of the regular meeting held October 4th, 2022. Approval of the warrants. Motion number 2, that the Common Council approves the warrants totaling $310,412.24, and that the same be placed on the Director of Finance's desk for payment as presented. On the consent agenda, motion number 3, that the Common Council concurs with the Mayor's recommendations to appoint the following to city boards and commissions. For the Board of Public Service, Ari Toby Ayemo, with an expiration date of November 16, 2024. To the Planning Commission, Sam Baskin, January 14, 2024, expiration date. And to the Environmental Board, Caitlin Davey, October 25th, 2025, as her expiration date. From the Finance and Human Resource, yes?
That's discussion.
Oh. All right, do I have any items to be removed? Thank you. No items to be removed? All right, do I have a motion to approve? All right, Luke followed by Mark, and I'll take the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Leisler?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFresh? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Raffin?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon?
Aye.
Great, all right, now, there's a discussion at the top of that header, so we'll go to the discussion agenda, Finance and Human Resources for discussion. Motion that the Common Council adopts the following resolution, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Oneonta, New York, whereas the City of Oneonta is submitting a request for $5.5 million grant to the New York State Department of Transportation pursuant to Section 5311, Title 49, United States Code for a project to provide public mass transportation service with the construction of a transit hub, capital, and for $400,000 for the purchase of 3 buses, capital, for the 2022-2024 fiscal years, and has committed the local share of $589,000. Whereas the City of Oneonta and the State of New York have entered into a continuing agreement which authorizes the undertaking of the projects and reimbursement of the federal and applicable state shares, and be it resolved that the mayor is authorized to act on behalf of the City of Oneonta to sign the application and progress and complete the above named projects, and be it further resolved that the mayor is authorized to sign any contracts or agreements between the City of Oneonta and any third-party subcontractor necessary to complete the public transportation project, subject to the approval of the city attorney. Motion number 5, that the Common Council authorizes an $8,800. Well, I am clearly on my way to the races here. All right, so with that, do we have a motion to approve? We have from Mark, and we have a second from Luke. And discussion? Len?
So the committee of $589,000 of local share, is that including the $400,000 for the buses?
No, it's a 10% local match by Jane. Go ahead.
So overall, the 5.5.
Oh, there's 5.5 plus $400,000. Correct, Jenny, there's two
Yes,
different.
yes, the 589 is for the local share for the transit hub and for the buses. And just so you know, for the local share match, we are reserving our ATC funding that we're getting from DOT to go towards the local match. And we also have about $100,000 in reserve right now to go towards the purchase of the buses.
Any other discussion?
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Leisler?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFresh? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Raffin?
Yes.
Councilmember Falcon?
Aye.
Okay, also for discussion, motion number 5. That the Common Council authorizes an $8,819 budget transfer within the Airport Fuel Farm Relocation Capital Project H65 to fund the additional engineering costs to rebid plans to reduce the scope of work for the project design as follows. In increase code H65.5610.2 airport fuel farm relocation engineering budget from $103,350 to $112,169 and reduce code H65.5610.21 airport fuel farm relocation construction from $786,000 to $777,181. Do I have a motion to approve? Len, and do I have a second? Second by Dave, and discussion. Yes, Katie.
So I'm just gonna ask a very, brief question, but I wanna be sure, does this change the overall? No, it's a transfer. It does not change the overall cost of the project. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? Okay.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Raptor?
Yes.
Councilmember Bell?
Aye.
Okay. Motion number 6, that the Common Council authorizes the mayor to enter into a renewal contract with the New York State Unified Court System for the period of April 1, 2022 through March 31, 2023, subject to review by the city attorney for the city's continued provision of cleaning, minor repair, and preventative maintenance services for the portions of the city's public safety building and ASET-C Allison Municipal Building that are used by the court, with the city to receive an estimate of $40,921 under the 2022-23 contract. Do I have a motion to approve? Glenn and Luke. And discussion. Glenn?
So why is this coming to us so late? Are we on a different calendar year than they are?
We just
I
got
just
it.
don't remember this in previous years, that's all. I apologize.
We do this every year, and we got this from the court, I want to say about a month ago, and we're just a little delayed because the council got, the finance, the October 11th finance got canceled, and then the council got canceled.
Right.
But
All right.
we do this annually.
And
Any other?
so the total contract for our city staff to do the cleaning for 1 year is $40,921.
It's an estimate.
Does that cover all our costs?
Yes, we,
It
John
seems
Williams,
low.
John Williams and I, go through it. You have to remember that it only covers a percentage. It's based on square footage of the whole building,
Okay,
and
gotcha.
each category has a different allocation.
Okay. Because we're sharing that employee with another department.
So, thank you, Judy. That was the first part of my question, is how is that calculated? The second part of my question is related to this motion, but I don't think it has to do with this specific contract. But, when we were talking about the public safety building being a finite building and the percentage of the building that the court system takes up, how is that determined, and at what point is that conversation able to be had? Does that make sense?
Yes,
Question that
but
makes
I'm going to
sense?
defer that question to Greg. I think with the building study, and then we would also have to look back at the origination of the contract itself with the court.
Okay.
So I think we would need Greg's advice, the city attorney's advice, before we could answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we were to look at changing the amount of space they have or what space they have, that
Mhm.
that piece we would negotiate with them. Obviously, we have
Right.
to provide the space now. It's to the city's benefit. The city court actually, I think it's a requirement that it might be a requirement that we provide that. It's certainly something in our contract.
Right. Yeah, and so I guess that was my question, was like, what are the terms of that contract, do you know, and at what point does it become appropriate to look at this space? But now I'm remembering that we had talked about doing space utilization study there.
Yeah, I think certainly the court will be involved in that study.
Yeah. Okay, excellent, thanks.
Good. Any other discussion? No. Have to have clerk roll the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaFarge?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Raptor?
Yes.
Councilmember Bell?
Aye.
Motion number 7, that the common council approves the city administrator's appointment of Matthew Behe to the position of maintenance worker at a base annual salary of $31,127, CSEA grade 4, effective October 26, 2022, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Right, motion, I've got Mark Davies, followed by Katie. Discussion?
Yeah, I just got a quick question. Greg, is that's starting salary, 31? Is that's starting salary for the union, right?
Well, it's CSEA grade 4, the union
Right,
has a salary.
that's like their step.
Right, each grade has 5 steps in it. There's a job grade which you progress to each year over the course of those 5 years. So that's the starting right here. 4 grade.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Parucci? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rath?
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Motion number 8, that the common council approves the city administrator's appointment of Brian Hosier to the position of heavy equipment operator at a base annual salary of $34,950, CSEA grade 9, effective October 26, 2022, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Do I have a motion to approve? Mark Davies, followed by Glenn Carson. And discussion? None? Secretary, take the vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Parucci? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rath?
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Number 9, motion that the common council approves the city administrator's appointment of Samuel Revere to the position of firefighter at a base annual salary of $39,009, IAFF Step 1, salary schedule D2, effective October 26, 2022, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. I'm going to look at Scott and Len as our, and we'll have no discussion, and we'll move on to a vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Davies?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Parucci? Aye. Councilmember Carson?
Yes.
Councilmember Harrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Rath?
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Motion number 10, that the common council establishes the titles of Human Resources Director, Senior Human Resources Specialist, and Human Resources Specialist, subject to all applicable civil service requirements allocated to administrative personnel manual salary grades A4, A2, and A1 respectively, with standard workday of 8 hours. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
So I've got Luke, and I'm sorry, did I hear a second? Dave as the second, and discussion?
Does this have any implication on our charter?
I'm aware.
I don't know, I think I might disagree with that, but that's just my opinion. I mean, it's in the charter as a personnel director,
Oh, I'm gonna
not
pull it
human
up.
resources.
Does that mean that I'm sorry,
The requirements, right?
does that mean that if, currently it does list a personnel director, right, in the charter, so does that mean that that position is being abolished and this is being put in place of it?
Which if we're abolishing that position, it should be part of this motion.
That position is not being abolished, this position is being created, and this is the one that obviously you'll see in the next motion is proposed to be filled.
We can always go back to abolish something that's in the charter. Whether we want to put this in charter in its place is entirely up to the council, but it's not necessary. I remember years ago, we had discussion about which positions we would put in there, and ultimately, we left in what was in the charter before that. We just kept it the same. I think since then, we changed the name City Chamberlain to Finance Director. But, so.
That's what I was getting at, that this is a change in the charter. Right, so
No, it's
I'm
not.
not the charter commission, I just don't want to.
No, it's a new position.
Understand.
What Greg said is right. You can establish a new position. We're not about necessarily abolishing personnel director position. We can, and that we would have to, if we want to go and remove the personnel director position, we would have to do that. That would be a quick charter change.
Right, but this personnel director has been funded, passed through the budget. This position we're creating, we're now gonna have to fund it, correct?
Of course.
So, I've seen that this has a direct impact.
We had a city engineer, when we wrote the new charter, there was no city engineer here. But we left that in case we had a city engineer that we would eventually hire again. And it was years before we had a city engineer. So,
I'd like to defer to Dave Mersey, if he can hear us, to ask his legal opinion on whether I just don't want to get caught where we're making a change or we shouldn't make a change, that's all.
You might not know either.
oh, I'm sure he knows.
Sure.
He's been,
We saw him earlier.
yeah, he's not able to connect. We're there, but we can connect.
David, it's Len Carson. I just want to get clarity. We're working on motion.
I've been watching you on YouTube.
Okay, so then can you answer my question? Are we making a change to the charter, and is this the right process if we are?
No, David expressed the accurate situation. You can create specific job descriptions, and they don't have to be necessarily charter provisions. And I would suggest that you simply leave the charter as it is. And as Dave suggested, that if in fact you go back to that description, you'll already have it. You are going to have to, as you talked about, you are going to have to do an amendment, a budget amendment, in order to fund the new position. But you're not changing the charter. You're just simply creating a position. That's perfectly okay for the council to do.
Right, but isn't in essence, without any of us on council, at least I haven't seen what the requirements are for this new human resource director or senior human resource specialist. I'm primarily focusing on the director's position. That's replacing the personnel director. We're not going to add another person, and that's why I'm suggesting about the funding of it. And I haven't heard anybody talk about the funding of it yet.
Yeah, if you're not satisfied that you've been sufficiently brought up to speed as to what the new position is going to entail, that's a different story. But if that's your concern and the other council members agree with you, then do whatever you need to do in order to be fully educated as to what the new position is and what the job duties are. But there's no charter problem with creating a new entity, a new job description. That doesn't. But again, I would suggest, as David mentioned, that don't necessarily destroy or dissolve the other positions. It's better to have them open and available than to have to create or wipe them out as the situation arises. Does that make sense?
Agreed. But in essence, we're replacing the personnel director with a human resource director.
In essence, that's the case, sure, because there's not, if you follow through with creating a position and then put somebody in it,
Right.
The human resource director position will be vacant.
Right, so I haven't heard of a plan on how we're defunding the personnel director to fund the human resource director yet, and we're up to motion 10, so I just wanted your
Yeah.
opinion.
Again, that's a policy decision, not a legal one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you got it. I'll still here, keep watching, guys.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep, you got it. Bye-bye.
Further discussion?
Yeah, so I mean, Lon brought up a good point. We haven't seen qualifications for this.
So civil service job description has been approved by the Civil Service Commission, as have the other two, the human resources specialist and the senior human resources specialist. That's the role of Civil Service Commission to establish.
Right, when did they make those approvals?
I don't know the date is.
I wanna say it was,
August.
August, I wanna say it was back in August.
Probably would have been August because we had the positions created, established titles, descriptions before we had that position. Would have been August.
And so what is the thought process from your perspective, your desk, of changing out from a personnel director to a human resource director?
It's essentially modernizing the title that we're using. It's more common to have a human resources director or department than personnel. It's semantics more than anything. We updated the description, as we do often when we, replace positions, we'll look at descriptions, see if they're up to date, if there's any changes that are needed. This is something that former personnel director, Katie Becker, had recommended. We worked on this, went to the Civil Service Commission, presented to them, they adopted it. So it's updating the title.
So it's updating the title, but making small tweaks to the publications, the requirements, the day-to-day operation time. I'm just not sure what you're doing there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me to go through the personnel director job description versus the HR job description. Again, that was all, taken care of and done by the Civil Service Commission.
Is that something that could be shared with the council, the job description?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should.
That might look blindsided.
Yeah, it was advertised publicly as that position, but I don't believe I sent it directly to the council.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do we have any further discussion?
Well, I'm just trying to understand why the legislative body, who's now being asked to vote on this, wasn't advised of the need to make these changes prior to the petitioning of our civil service board and moving forward on that. I just would like some clarity of, it feels like we're at the end game. You've gone through the process and you didn't explain to the legislative body of why you needed to make those changes.
I believe that when we discussed former personnel director Katie Becker's resignation and our plan to replace that position, that we did explain that we were intending to update the titles and go through that process with the Civil Service Commission.
Correct.
Which is what I'd have to look back at my notes, and I might not even have notes on that. That might have been just a conversation I don't recall exactly. But certainly, if you're implying that there was some deceit or
Not just, I'm not
or
implying that.
misdirection on my part, I apologize if that's how it appears. That certainly wasn't my intent. As I said, the intent was just simply to update the job description and the title to be in line with what we're trying to recruit. So that was it.
I got one more question. I'm trying to make the best decision. What is you said in here, the administrative personnel manual salary grades A4, A2, and E1 respectively. What? I don't know what you're talking about. What the salary grades should be.
The council approves, usually it's in the same, a motion in the same agenda as the adoption of the annual budget. First meeting in December each year, you approve the administrative personnel manual. Administrative personnel are not unionized. This manual was created several decades ago by several mayors ago, and councils ago, that essentially outline, the benefits and the salary that the administrative personnel are receiving. That's how you assign their raises for the year. The admin annual salary schedule was created 5 or 6 years ago originally, I believe. It might have been under City Manager George Bordenauer. That was to create some consistency in where we assigned titles and where we would hire. We created a hiring range. That's not to say the council couldn't hire any administrator at any salary they chose to, because there's no union contracts involved. But that sort of was the guideline that the city manager now goes by. So in looking at updating these titles, we looked at, for HR director, where was personnel director, we put HR director in that same grade. And we look at where personnel assistant is, that's where we put human resources specialist, and we didn't have a senior level position, so we assigned that in an appropriate grade relevant to the other two. So you should have seen that in past years, last year around December timeframe as an attachment to the council agenda where that was approved. But I'm false for not remembering exactly. That's just a schedule at the end of the.
So it's almost like the CSEA grade, like.
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
similar. With the salary ranges for each position.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Absolutely, thank you.
June?
I just don't know if you want me to answer the budget question, Lynn's budget question. I will confirm that the council was filled in, that the HR job title was going to be modernized, just like the Director of Finance was modernized from the City Chamberlain's job description. And also, there is funding within the Personnel Department between the salary codes and the health insurance codes, the savings between the differences from what the two different employees require. So there's plenty of funding, and it'll just be a transfer from one line to another. But there's plenty of funding within the personnel budget to cover it.
Right, but in essence, you are gonna defund the personnel director's line.
In the
Fund.
In the 2023 adopted budget, yes, we will be changing the personnel director title to the human resources title.
Any other discussion? Okay. Call the roll.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Dees?
Yes.
Councilmember Risberger?
Yes.
Councilmember LaParche?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?
Abstain.
Councilmember Harrington?
Abstain.
Councilmember Rafter?
Yes.
Councilmember Falk?
Aye.
With that, we move on to motion 11. Motion that the Common Council appoints Joseph Temming to the position of Human Resources Director at a base annual salary of $80,000 and Administrative Personnel Manual Salary Grade A4, effective October 26, 2022, subject to the satisfaction of all applicable civil service requirements. Do I have so I've got Dave followed by Mark Davies and discussion. Luke?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm very much so looking forward to voting for Joe Temming. He has shown, in his current position, competence and excellence, but also, in standing up for his fellow employees, which I think is very important for human resources, director. So, very much so looking forward to voting for you, Joe.
Any, yes, John?
I would suggest that we, excuse me,
That's fine.
but we discuss this as a council because we're going to be talking about Joe Temming and talking about a person promoting or moving a person into a position, and I think that we should be discussing that as a council.
In executive session.
Excuse me.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to go into executive session.
I'm sorry, could you read the motion to discuss the position?
To discuss personnel in a specific.
Relating to
Specific
the
personnel. Create the space where we can have a discussion.
I see, okay.
All right, so with that, we have a motion and we have a second, and we'll take a vote.
Councilmember Murphy?
Aye.
Councilmember Dees?
No.
Councilmember Risberger?
No.
Councilmember LaParche?
Aye.
Councilmember Carson?